Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to today's vlog for Thursday, the 23rd of April. I hope you're all well. Apologies if there's a little rattle to this video. My phone mount fell apart in the heat this morning. I've sort of put it all back together, but I'm not convinced it's as solid as it was previously. Also doing this video, I've got the air conditioning on because it's too warm. So hopefully there's no background humming. Apologies if there is. I'm going to start today. I had a question from David Barnard a couple of days ago. Thank you, David. He asked me, do I miss being a London taxi driver? For those that are new to the channel and never watched my sort of introduction video where I explained all about my working life, between 1991 and 2020 I was a black cab driver in London. Took me 2 years and 2 months to complete the knowledge. So the answer to the question, do I miss it? And the answer is no, I don't. The three main reasons actually almost correlate with being a courier driver and I think the courier industry and how that has changed. The first of the things, and please do not take this as some sort of racist statement, it isn't, but the demographic of London has changed beyond all comprehension. Back in 91, areas like Bethnal Green to the east, Clapham to the south, Hammersmith to the west, and Camden, Kentish Town to the north, 70% of the population that lived there and in central London were British. That has changed. London as a city, with the outskirts of the city, has increased by over 1 million people. It's now over 10 million. It was 9 back in those days. And yeah, the population's changed. A lot of people have moved out and people have come in. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it changed the way people use transport. The people that came into the country, they're not as loyal to perhaps traditions that we had in London, and people always used to use black cabs. At the day, back in 91, private hire minicabs weren't licensed as well, so there was a lot of stigma around about the trustworthiness of those guys and girls. But London's changed and people don't feel any loyalty to perhaps what was there, whether it be transport or restaurants or whatever. So that's one change. The second change is technology, probably a bigger thing than any. Back in the day, I was on a radio circuit and we had a small terminal in the cab which we told which postcode we was in. So if we just dropped in Notting Hill, we would tell it we was in West 11 and we'd be given a queue number, and when a job, you'll be say number 4 and you're fourth in the queue for a job in that area. And that was open to abuse because you could tell the system you was in West 1 when you weren't. And then satellites came in and that changed the terminal, and then you didn't have to do anything. The satellites knew automatically where you were. And of course mobile phones appeared, and then with mobile phones apps appeared, and that got rid of all the terminals. Everything was done on the phone. Private hire in that meantime, in whenever it was, the late 90s I think it was, got licensed, and the app companies like Uber and Bolt all started to take a foothold, and they've had quite a foothold now in London for that time, and that chipped away at our work base. And then the third thing is the roads. I'm sure most of you at some stage have the unfortunate task of going into London. So many of the roads are closed, cut-throughs have been taken out, no left turns, no right turns, cycle lanes now everywhere, definitely in places they don't need to be. The biggest one being Park Lane, going from Hyde Park Corner up to Marble Arch. There was a perfectly good, and still is a perfectly good, bike lane the other side of the fence in Hyde Park, yet for some reason they decided to take 3 lanes and turn it into one being a bike lane, the middle one being a bus lane. Oh, okay, taxis can use the bus lane, but it's just caused traffic chaos. And the upshot of that is, where people used to use us, say perhaps to go from Mayfair to Waterloo, and it used to take 10 minutes, cost them about £8–9, that now is taking 35–40 minutes and costing nearer £15, and people stop using us. So towards the end of my time Yeah, the income was dropping off, costs were going up, insurance was going up, because of the amount of uninsured vehicles in London that were having accidents, and it always seemed twice I got hit by uninsured vehicles. And the cost of the cab as well. When I first bought my first cab in 1991, cost me 36,000. You want to go and buy a brand new cab today, you won't get any change out of £80,000. So by the time you pay any interest on hire purchase arrangements, etc., it's going to cost you 90,000 plus. So do I miss it? No, I don't. But there are a lot of correlations to the courier industry. I'm sure if you were a courier driver, and there were, sure there's some of you on here that were, back in the 90s, it was probably all phone calls. You probably had to ring up the local courier firm to get your work. Getting around was easier. Yeah, and just, yeah, maybe the amount of companies that were using you was greater as well. I don't know, obviously I didn't do that back in the day, but I think there's some correlations there between courier driving in the 90s and taxi driving in the 90s as there is today. And the other thing that have spoken about this before, I think it would be a great exercise. I will do this one day. I'm sure I'm going to do this one day. I will do a day without a sat nav, because we didn't have sat navs back as driving a truck or driving a cab. There was no sat navs, and I think now we probably all totally rely on sat navs. And I've got to be honest, it would be quite strange to do the job, I think, now without a sat nav. But I might well do it one day. We'll give that a go and see how that gets on. Right, anyway, thank you, David, for that question. If you do any other questions, either about my days in transport, road haulage or taxi driving, or my time in football with West Ham and Arsenal, please ask away. There's no secrets there. Well, I don't think there's any secrets there. There might be one or two I can't tell you, especially about football, but there we go, that's another story. On to today. I can only use today in capital letters. It's been disaster, rubbish, horrific. I left you yesterday on my way back from Hereford. I wasn't sure if the CX was up and running. I thought it was, but it turned out it wasn't quite back up and running fully. I had a couple of messages to say that jobs did start to trickle through from 4 o'clock, and last night I was just looking at my emails, and I'm sure, like you all, we all got an email from the CX about 4:15 yesterday, apologising for the previous 2 days, but to reassure us it was all up and running. I did manage to win a job yesterday afternoon. It was a nice straightforward job that I thought would get the day off and running. It was from Ipswich. It was a collection for 7:30 this morning, so that's absolutely perfect. And it was just coming back to Colchester, a long wheelbase, only 16 miles, and I put a price of £60 on. And it's a regular shipper, and I got that job, and I thought, great, that's a good start to the day. One little caveat, and I've spoken about this before, especially on long wheelbase jobs, we never know what we're picking up. You could go in and pick up something. You might pick up one 3 metre long piece of wood, which obviously needs a long wheelbase. But I wonder sometimes whether our pricing should be affected by the goods that we're picking up. You could, for example, pick up 3 pallets of, say, bin bags, and there wouldn't be a lot of value to bin bags. There is a value, and they're obviously worth something to the people selling them and buying them. But today I picked up from a builder's merchants, and it was heating and plumbing supplies. It was a huge boiler. I probably had nearly 2 dozen radiators of various sizes, all the pipe work, various other boxes, controls. I think there's probably a high value stuff to it, and looking at the house that I took it to, that's also a very high value house. So I think with the amount of goods I was carrying, and the boiler had to be stood up, so that needed securing, and blankets had to be put on. They wanted blankets put in on the floor to put the radiators on, so they didn't, and then secured so they weren't moving about and getting damaged, although they were wrapped. There's a lot more value to that, so really that job should be worth more than the £60 I got, but of course we don't know what we're picking up most of the time, so we just have to give a price based on our van and ourselves. But anyway, it was a good job. I was there for 7:10 or 7:15, I was off site at 7:40, so because there was so much stuff, it took a little bit of time to load. No problems getting to Colchester. I was there on site at 8:15, couple of blokes on site. I was all done off site for 8:25, 8:30. Made myself down to Costa to get myself a coffee and look for work. There was one job came up straight away from Clacton, 20 minutes down the road, going to Reading for a long wheelbase, 130 miles. I put a price of 150 on it. I don't think that's exorbitant. Didn't get that job. Job came up from Chelmsford. That was about 30 minutes away, going to Harlow for a small wheelbase. 28 miles. Put a minimal. I put £50 on it, which I think is probably a fair minimum, but didn't get that. With those two jobs, there was already a lot of vans around. There was probably about a dozen vans around the Colchester and surrounding areas with a sort of 5-mile radius, which was slightly worrying. Job came up from Braintree, that's 40 minutes away, going to Wellingborough, small wheelbase, 88 miles, £100 I bid on that, didn't get it. Couple of jobs came up from Colchester for one shipper there, 45-day merchant, so I'm not really overly keen. One was going into central London with about 4 drops, and one was going to Bicester, an area I've been a few times recently with no luck of getting anything back, so I actually didn't bid on those. It was noticeable there was about 4 or 5 jobs that came up from Colchester, Witham, Braintree area with multi-drops in central London. One had about 10 on it, one had about 5, and I think the other one had 6. They are obviously jobs that drivers would do normally, and I guess don't want to do because of the tube strike. Traffic in London is horrendous with tube strikes. Those drivers probably are regular drivers that have probably phoned in sick, hence these are being put on the CX. I only bid on one that was 5 drops. I think it was E17, Northwest 1, Northwest 11, and then no, West 11, Northwest 11, and finishing at Slough. And I put a price of £250 on it, almost like a day and a bit's work with the traffic and the stress and the hassle. Not surprisingly, I didn't get a job, but that was it. From that time then, which was about 10:15 till 12 o'clock, there was nothing come up in Colchester. Now, I've said this before, when I'm out and about in other areas, I've been this week in Peterborough, Bury St Edmunds, I went yesterday to Hereford. Because my feed is stuck at 50 miles, I see plenty of jobs during the day coming out Colchester. Not always ones that I'd want to do, but there are jobs there. And again, because I'm sitting in Colchester, this happened the other week, I see nothing. And I really do now start to believe that the algorithms in the app can do this. They can almost say, you're not getting anything from this area. If you want a job, you're going to have to go 30 minutes, 40 minutes away to go and get it. Now, I can't prove that. I really can't prove that, but I am surprised. I gave up-ish at 12 o'clock. I needed to go and buy some AdBlue. So I went off to Halfords to go and get that. And I decided I didn't have my lunch with me. I thought, I'm going to go and have some lunch. I'm going to get out of the van and go and have some lunch, which I did. Got back in the van at about 12:45. Job came up straight away, funny enough, from Colchester. So maybe it's just really, really quiet in Colchester. It was a job going to Harwich. It was a small van job, 16 miles. I put £40 on it. I will not go any lower than £40, but I put £40 on it. I didn't get that. I've given up. I'm just popping into Clacton. There's something I want to try and pick up. I'm done for the day. It's 1:30. I really can't be bothered anymore. Lost interest. So I'm going to just go and do this little job for myself that I want to go and do. Get something out of the way I haven't got to worry about the weekend. And that's going to be it for today. One job, £60. Extremely disappointing. I will caveat that by saying I did okayish on Monday and Tuesday when I know a lot of you really struggled. I did sort of read Facebook posts from people saying they didn't do any work on those 2 days, whereas I did okayish. I think I got 160 and 200. so it all sort of, you know, balances out. But I'm really disappointed. I thought with the CX being back up and running, the weather being nice, we're now in April, we'd be okay. But there we go, it is what it is, use that phrase. We'll go again tomorrow. I haven't got anything for tomorrow yet. I will have a look in a short while, once I've just done this thing, and start worrying about tomorrow. Hope you're all right. Hope you had a decent day anyway, and we'll talk tomorrow. All the best now. Cheers, Paul.